Imagine opening your mailbox and finding nothing from the electric company. No bill, no past due notice, no polite letter announcing a rate adjustment, just silence for 11 years. That's not fantasy for one workshop in Holmes County, Ohio. It's just Friday. The family that runs it is Amish, and they've been powering their entire operation with a spiral-shaped device that catches wind and turns it into electricity. Not a turbine in the traditional sense. Nothing spinning fast enough to threaten a bird or wake a sleeping baby. Just a quiet, vertical coil that grabs 80% of the energy moving through it, while the $100 million machines the government subsidizes barely scrape 25%. $30. That's what the prototype cost. Hardware store parts. No rare earth metals. No Chinese supply chain. No concrete foundation poured by a licensed contractor who files paperwork with the county. Just an idea that worked the first time it faced a breeze and has worked every day since. So naturally, they banned it. The average American now pays $1,400 a year for electricity. Multiply that by 20 years, you get $28,000, and that's assuming rates stay flat, which they never do. Every January, the utility company adjusts something upward: delivery fees, fuel surcharges, infrastructure recovery costs, words designed to make a price hike sound like accounting. And we pay it because what's the alternative? Candles? A gas generator that screams in the backyard and drinks $15 of fuel every 8 hours? That spiral in Ohio is the alternative. But here is the uncomfortable detail. The government didn't study it, didn't test it, didn't ask the inventor to submit a white paper or apply for a grant. They sent a letter demanding removal, citing codes written for massive industrial installations that have nothing to do with a silent coil bolted to a shed. Now, ask yourself what that letter was really protecting: public safety or a revenue stream, electrical codes written by industry insiders, or the $28,000 your household represents on a spreadsheet in a corporate office somewhere? The Amish saw this coming before any of us were born. When the grid arrived in rural America during the 1930s, they watched neighbors rush to connect. Then they watched the bills arrive, then the televisions, then the dependency. They didn't reject electricity. They rejected the leash it came with. Every wire into a house is a decision about who controls your life. That spiral was their answer, and the speed with which it was silenced tells you how badly someone wants you to keep paying. The man who built it does not want his name published. For reasons that will become obvious, I will call him Jacob. Jacob grew up around wind, not the sleek fiberglass turbines dotting interstate highways. Amish windmills, wooden wheels with wooden blades built to pump water, repaired with hand tools, lasting generations. No wires, no meters, no monthly cost. But those windmills did one thing. Jacob wanted to do everything. So he went back to first principles. He studied how wind actually behaves when it hits a structure. Not the clean laminar flow engineers draw in textbooks, but the chaotic spiraling energy that tore apart the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in 1940. Engineers spent 8 decades learning to eliminate that phenomenon, called vortex shedding. Jacob watched the old footage and asked the question nobody else thought to ask. What if you capture it instead of fighting it? His answer was a spiral. An Archimedean spiral wrapped vertically around a central mast. Wind hits it from any direction, enters a curved channel, and accelerates as the radius tightens. That's basic fluid dynamics. Faster wind means more energy. But here is where Jacob broke from a century of turbine design. He didn't try to extract energy by slowing the wind with blades. He let the accelerated air pass over micro veins that oscillate in resonance with the wind's natural frequency. Those oscillations drive a linear induction system. No gears, no bearings, no spinning blades creating tip noise that neighbors complain about 3 fields away. This matters because every traditional turbine obeys something called Betz's law. In 1919, a German physicist proved no rotating blade can extract more than 59% of wind energy. That's the theoretical ceiling. Reality sits around 25%. Jacob's spiral isn't bound by Betz because it doesn't work through rotational interception. It captures energy from the pressure differential itself. The vortex field becomes the engine. Efficiency jumps to 80%, not slightly better. 3 times what industry calls state-of-the-art. The first prototype cost $28 and lit his workshop. The third ran his lathe. By the 5th, he had full energy independence and full attention from people who preferred he didn't. The quiet hum of that spiral wasn't just electricity. It was proof that a man with curiosity, basic materials, and no connection to the grid could outperform billion-dollar energy companies. And that kind of proof makes the wrong people very nervous. The first letter came on a Tuesday, plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a single sheet from the Ohio Power Sighting Board informing Jacob that his workshop was operating an unregistered electrical generation facility in violation of state code. The letter cited public safety, grid interconnection standards, and a mandatory engineering review that would cost more than his farm grossed in a year. Read that again. Grid interconnection standards. Jacob's system was not connected to any grid. It had never fed a single watt back into a power line. The electricity traveled from the spiral to his workshop through wires he installed himself, powering devices he owned, on property he paid taxes on. The grid was not involved, but the regulation was written broadly enough to capture anything that generates electricity. Period. Whether you sell it, share it, or use it to charge a battery in your own barn, the state claims jurisdiction the moment you produce a volt. The second letter arrived 2 weeks later. This one threatened fines, daily fines, accruing fines, the kind of financial pressure designed to crush a family that does not use banks. The Amish pay their obligations. They do not litigate. They do not hold press conferences. The board knew exactly who they were dealing with. Jacob's neighbors urged him to comply, not because they disagreed with what he built, but because they understood what happens when Amish communities attract legal attention. Property seizures, liens, the slow, bureaucratic grinding that does not care how efficient your invention is or how many scientific laws it rewrites. It only cares that you did not ask permission. So Jacob took it down. The spiral that captured 80% of available wind, built from $30 of hardware store parts, generating free electricity for over a decade, was dismantled in an afternoon. He stored the pieces in a loft above his workshop, where they still sit today. Now here is the detail that should make you angry. Nobody from the power board ever visited his property. No inspector verified a safety hazard. No engineer tested his claims about efficiency, noise, or electromagnetic interference. They did not need to. The regulation was the weapon. The threat was enough. Meanwhile, utility companies in Ohio have raised residential rates 8 times in the last 10 years. They have collected billions while operating aging infrastructure that fails during every major storm. They have lobbied successfully against rooftop solar incentives, against community wind projects, against anything that lets a household produce what they consume. And the same board that crushed a $30 Amish invention for lacking paperwork has never once denied a utility rate hike for lacking justification. The system does not fear competition, it fears example. Jacob's spiral was never going to replace the grid overnight, but it proved something unforgivable. That energy independence is not a future promise. It is a past tense reality, sitting disassembled in a barn, waiting for permission that will never come. None of this would have reached the outside world if a retired engineer from Toledo had not stopped at a baked goods stand on a Sunday afternoon. His name was Walter. He had spent 31 years designing turbine blades for a major manufacturer. He knew Betz's law the way a carpenter knows a hammer. It was not theory. It was the invisible ceiling he had bumped his head against for 3 decades of meetings, mock-ups, and patent applications that all delivered the same disappointing number, 25%, maybe 27% on a windy day with fresh bearings and a tailwind of tax credits. Walter was buying a shoe-fly pie when he noticed the lights in the barn behind the stand. Bright, steady, clearly electric. He looked for power lines. There were none. He asked the young Amish woman at the register how they powered the lights. She shrugged and pointed at the spiral. Most tourists would have nodded and driven away. Walter walked closer. He circled the device twice, then 3 times. He crouched to examine the base, noted the absence of a gearbox, the lack of a yaw mechanism, the elegant simplicity of the spiral channel. He asked more questions. The family, polite but guarded, gave short answers. Walter went home and could not sleep. What followed was a 6-month campaign of persistence. He drove back every weekend. He brought diagrams. He brought calculations scribbled on napkins. He explained who he was, and more importantly, who he was not. He was not a reporter. He was not a government agent. He was just a man who had spent his career designing blades and suddenly realized he had been working on the wrong problem. Eventually, Jacob agreed to talk, not in the workshop, not on the record. Just 2 engineers discussing wind across a kitchen table while coffee went cold. Walter listened, Jacob sketched, and what emerged from those conversations was a detailed technical description of a system that violated no laws of physics, but threatened every law of economics that governed the energy industry. Walter wrote it all down. Not to publish. He understood the Amish aversion to publicity. He documented it because he needed to know for himself whether Jacob was a genius, or whether 31 years of his own career had been spent optimizing a dead end. His conclusion, after months of analysis, was both. The spiral worked because it redefined the problem entirely. Turbines intercept kinetic energy. The spiral captures pressure differentials. One is bound by bets. The other ignores it. Walter faced a choice. Take what he had learned to his former employer, who would almost certainly patent the concept and bury it to protect existing revenue streams, or get the knowledge into the right hands before the wrong hands got to it. He chose a third path. He wrote a technical paper with all identifying details removed and submitted it to an open-source energy journal. It was peer-reviewed, published, and downloaded 70,000 times before a major utility trade group demanded its retraction. The journal refused. The paper is still online today, if you know where to look. Hidden in plain sight, like a spiral in an Amish barn. Walter died 2 years ago. Heart attack. Quick, the way he would have wanted it. But before he passed, he mailed a package to a journalist in Cleveland. Inside were Jacob's original sketches, Walter's technical notes, copies of the threatening letters from the Ohio Power Sighting Board, and a single handwritten note that read, "They didn't ban it because it failed. They banned it because $30 is a price tag the grid can never compete with." That package sat unopened for 8 months. The journalist, a woman named Diane, was covering city council meetings and school board votes and didn't have time for what looked like conspiracy mail from a retired engineer she had never met. When she finally opened it, she spent the next 6 months chasing every thread Walter had left her. What she found explains exactly why that spiral was silenced. The Ohio Power Siting Board is not some neutral regulatory body staffed by disinterested civil servants. Its board includes commissioners from Ohio's largest utility companies, the same companies that collect your $1,400 a year, the same companies that have lobbied for every rate increase, every anti-solar provision, every regulatory barrier that makes it illegal in many counties to disconnect from the grid entirely. They do not just write the rules. They sit on the board that enforces them. Diane obtained meeting minutes from the year Jacob received his first letter. Buried in the appendix of a quarterly review was a brief mention of anomalous off-grid generation in Holmes County. No name, no address. Just a note that staff had been directed to resolve the compliance issue before it generated broader interest. That is the phrase. Not safety hazard, not electrical fire, not imminent threat. They were afraid of attention. They were afraid of the question you are asking right now. If a $30 device can power a workshop for 11 years without a single dollar paid to a utility, what exactly are we paying for? Let me tell you about the small Dutch town Walter mentioned in his notes. Texel Island, population 13,000. 10 years ago, a local inventor created a device using 2 poles and a spiral channel inspired by a seashell. It powered a fishing cooperative's dockside operations. No grid connection. The town began a pilot program to install similar systems on municipal buildings. The Dutch Energy Ministry issued a report suggesting that widespread adoption could push household energy independence from 61% to 92%. That report was shelved. The pilot program was defunded. The inventor moved to Germany, where his patents were acquired by a holding company that has never manufactured a single unit. The pattern is consistent. The technology works. The economics terrify people who depend on the current system. And so the current system defends itself, not with arguments, but with regulations, with cease and desist letters, with patent acquisitions, with meeting minutes that refer to human innovation as a compliance issue. Here is what Diane's reporting ultimately uncovered, and it is the part that should keep you awake. There is no law explicitly banning Jacob's spiral. There does not need to be. The existing regulatory framework is so dense, so expensive to navigate, so carefully written to presume grid interconnection as the default, that any truly independent system becomes legally impossible without a team of lawyers and a mountain of fees. The ban is not a sign on the door. It is a maze with no exit. And that maze was built deliberately by people who understood that if the Amish can power a workshop for $30, the rest of us will start asking questions they cannot afford to answer. Jacob's spiral is still in that loft above the workshop. The pieces are labeled. The design is intact. A 28-year-old Amish apprentice, Jacob's nephew, has memorized the assembly sequence. He told Diane the only reason he has not rebuilt it is because the community is waiting. Waiting for what? She asked. For enough people to stop believing they need permission to be free. The technology exists. It has existed for more than a decade. The only thing missing is not a patent or a prototype or a breakthrough in materials science. The only thing missing is enough of us looking at a $30 spiral and a $28,000 leash and deciding we are done pretending those two numbers belong to the same conversation. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.